Akron City Council. Today we have, I believe, one item that's up for a public hearing, correct? And I will tell those that are in the audience here that are concerned about this public hearing what the process is. We will conduct two public hearings, one this afternoon right now, and the second one at 7 o'clock. Before those public hearings, we will ask that those that wish to testify before the committee and or council this evening be sworn in by a representative of our law department before you testify. We'll ask for comments. We will then close the public hearing and we will ask council members on the committee if they have questions this afternoon. And then this evening, after that public hearing, the committee will make a recommendation to all of council either to go forward and either approve or disapprove or table, take time on the item, refer the item. That's the process for conditional use requests here in the City of Akron Council. And so I'd like to ask a representative from our law department if anyone is going to be testifying either in favor or against or just have questions in reference to the public hearings today. Please stand up and be sworn in.
Okay, if you would, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If you do, say I do. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. At this point, the first item that's up for public hearing is authorizing a conditional use to construct an apartment development at the corner of Mull Avenue and Crawford Road.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Elegant Homes, Inc. intends to combine 3 vacant parcels to construct a 6-unit market-rate apartment development on this property. Each of 3 total buildings would measure 58 feet by 27 feet for 1,566 square feet of area. Building materials would be of vinyl siding with asphalt shingled roofing. Each separate unit would consist of 785 square feet and contain 2 bedrooms, a living room, bath, and a kitchen. A 6 feet by 8 foot at-grade wooden deck would be at the rear of each unit. 9-space paved parking area would be sited northwest of the buildings. The site plan indicates ample open space and landscaping. While the abutting residential land to the north and east of this proposal is single family, there are multiple conditionally zoned apartment developments to the south across Mull Avenue with spacious First Energy campus to the west. Developing this long vacant corner lot with 3 one-story 2-family buildings transitions between the single-family residential uses and the higher density apartment and commercial uses to the south and the west. Provided the petitioner installs wooden fencing along the eastern property line to buffer the buildings from the residences to the east, the planning staff recommends approval with conditions, while the Planning Commission recommends disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this point, we'll open up the public hearing and ask that those who are wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use requests, please come forward and provide for the committee your name and address.
I'm Joseph Blau of Elegant Homes, and my address is 1185 Sand Run Road, Akron, Ohio, 44313. And I wish to speak in favor of this. I've owned the property since 2007. We've made several attempts at putting in single-family homes between 110 and 130,000, but we did not receive any interest. The previous meeting with the Planning Commission, there was 2 neighbors that had some objection. Mr. Hadgeway, who actually purchased his home in December of 2008, and was concerned that these 3 apartments, which we figured would contain a total of 12 people, these apartments are designed for handicap use and probably for the elderly. But he was concerned that there's so many apartments in the area. However, I worked on the Mull apartment building, which Mr. Antonucci referred to back in 1970, and the previous adjacent 3-story buildings for the previous owners. So those apartments have actually been there between 40 and 42 years. Mr. Hadgeway, one of the neighbors' comment was this was overflooding the area. However, we figured like 12 people, 1-story apartments, they're slab buildings, they're handicap accessible, and actually one thing of history. I came to Akron in 1962, and I had just gotten married in October. Excuse me. Lost my job 2 weeks later and was able to come to Akron, get a job, and find apartments exactly like this at 1269 Rosslyn Avenue. They're still today. They're there today. So our idea was that we could provide some sort of affordable housing to either handicapped people or elderly, or even someone with a child, single child. And we felt this would be unobtrusive and would be actually a benefit to the area. Since there's other heavy construction just down the street, we did not see this would be a problem.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against the conditional use request at the corner of Mall Avenue and Crawford Road?
My name is Scott Gross, 915 Mall Avenue, Suite 1A, Akron, Ohio. I'm not speaking for or against. I just wanted to bring some history to that area. And sir, I didn't realize this is only a 3-unit now versus a 6-unit?
It's 3 buildings, 6 units.
So will it be a second story?
No, they're all 1 story.
All right, so they're like duplexes and,
Correct.
or twinplexes, let's call them, because they're, all right. Was it one time, were they 2-story?
No, never.
All right. We were fortunate in getting some conditional zoning back in 1968 for the units previously known as, I guess, Commodore Club, now the Heritage. And we've seen the area pretty much grow over the years. I have to take difference that we need more multifamily housing. I believe there's enough on the street. There was just a conditional zoning before this group and council, maybe about 1.5 years ago, where they were wanted to put some on the corner of, excuse me, I'm getting over cold, on the corner of Mall Avenue and White Pond Drive, basically. And the issue there was that they thought there was a big need for it, and it turned out that they just left town with the idea that maybe there wasn't a market after all. The property that you own is really residential 100%. I don't see how it could be anything else. And if I understand right, the city of Akron is going to be demolishing the Litchfield High School, which is the old Simon Perkins, and there's going to be 90 single-family homes going in there. So the idea of more apartments doesn't make sense. I don't believe there is a market. I know we've had vacancies for the last 40 years. I just don't think it's the right use for that space. And then as far as not having a sidewalk to service that property, if you take a look up and down the streets, wherever there is housing or multifamily housing, there are sidewalks. So that should be a condition regardless, whatever goes into that corner. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak against the conditional use request on Mall Avenue and Crawford Road? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone? No. Hearing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion and open up to committee members. If there's any questions or comments from any committee members. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had a chance to speak briefly with Mr. Blau. We had a meeting a few weeks back, and I've heard from some of the residents in the area. I would like to have the opportunity to try to talk to them together. There's some concerns on the resident side, so my request would be for the committee to please take time.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. So noted. Is there any further questions or comments from anyone? Okay, very good. And if you need me at that meeting, I'll be happy to attend if needed. Absolutely. So I will invite those back that were here this afternoon for this public hearing. We'll conduct an additional public hearing at 7 o'clock as mentioned before, and we will make a recommendation after that, which we're hearing at least from the ward council person to take time. So that's where we're at. So very good. Thank you again for coming down this afternoon. I'm going to recommend time on the balance of the agenda, short of any comments or questions, and move on to the new list of legislation, of which we have one item that is in fact up for a public hearing, which is authorizing the mayor or designee to file applications and to enter into agreements for funding for certain capital improvements under the Ohio Public Works Commissioners Local Transportation Improvement Program and the State Capital Improvements Program. Mr. Ashley is here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The City of Akron had utilized this annual funding source since 1989 for a variety of projects, including roadway improvements, water and sewer facilities, as well as the Bridgestone and Goodyear redevelopments. We will be submitting 9 applications. We're requesting funds this year of $23 million. Approximately, local share is $9 million with matching federal funds of $9 million, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And this is, this helps with regards to, it's in the legislation, there's 9 different, and obviously won't get all 9 in all likeliness, but this helps in terms of the funding for the overall projects. And so this is, we do this annually. It's typically, these programs are in our capital budget as well.
Yes, sir.
And this is, hopefully we'll get some funding here. So it's any questions or comments from anyone? Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2. One well, let me start with the one that's directly impacts my ward. The Mall Avenue improvements, it says brick pavement reconstruction. Are we talking about paving over the brick? Are we going to lay new brick?
It'd be brick reconstruction.
Yeah, it would be repairing the brick that's there and relaying it.
Okay, okay, thank you, because you know that's a very sensitive issue there. And then on the, is this Roaming Road reconstruction, is this in relation to what we read in the paper this weekend? Is this connected to that, or is this different?
Yeah, they did reference Ohio Public Works Commission in the paper, and that would be these 2 projects that we list here. We broke it down into a phase 1 and a total
This is just the
project.
roads, not
Yes.
the actual
Yeah,
site.
the road is in pretty dire need of repair, and it helps set the site up for redevelopment. And as Jim mentioned, there were 2 projects we're applying for. There's a phase 1, which is smaller project limits right near the mall, if I should say former mall, and then there's a larger project. So we're hoping to get the larger project, but we submitted for a shorter one too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swiderski?
I just want to give us a little more details about the relationship between the state funding and the local funding. You know, is there a ratio or a statement you can make about that?
Well, obviously, the more local share, the more competitive your projects will be. Under the SCIP program, it's 90-10 is the maximum you can get from the state is 90%, and for LTIP projects, you can get 100%. But we're competing with all the other communities in Summit County, so normally you try to weigh to be competitive of not asking for, 90 or 100%.
So what we can do is we can put in more local money and get more points, but it'll cost more local money. So we always kind of try to strike that balance of the amount of local money we feel the capital budget can absorb to get the most points. So the match depends, but as Jim said, it's normally a 90% state, 10% local match.
Great.
It's a pretty good return on investment.
Yes, that's wonderful. That's very good.
Ms. Movian?
My question has to do with, is this strictly just for the Romick Road portion? Because once you get to, say, Primos or 261 and go downhill, that becomes Vernon Odom, or?
Yeah, that would be a future phase to continue down the hill.
What my concern is sidewalk. Are you planning to include sidewalks into that phase? Because it's the same situation that we have currently on Brownstone, where we've allowed the facility to be built, and it will be opening soon, and you don't have sidewalks for the residents to walk down.
Specifically sidewalks on the hill, down Vernon Odom from Primos to, that, as Jim said, that's not part of this application, but if we were to apply for that in the future, I think sidewalks would definitely be part of the scope of that project.
So how long do we think we're talking about? Because at Stony Point that you've already approved is scheduled to be open soon.
Yeah, and for that project, there was a requirement to get sidewalks to the bus stop, but they wouldn't extend down the hill. Yeah, Jim and I would have to probably get back to you on what the schedule may be for for upgrading that part of Vernon Odom would be.
Because you want to look at that, because that's where all the eateries are, down the hill. And that's probably where those residents will probably be walking down to. And I know that Aldi is up the hill, but still, you're talking about those fast food places that people would be going to. So you want to consider that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Swirsky?
Just follow up briefly. Sometimes our residents wonder why we're spending a lot of money on these kind of improvements that they think they're worried about the potholes. So truthfully, the truth is 90% of the money for these improvements are coming from the state. So there's not money coming out of pothole fixing money.
No, and
These are
resurfacing
90%
isn't
from
a...
the state.
Yeah, the state
Yeah.
really doesn't want this program for resurfacing. It's for reconstruction of roads.
But a side benefit of it is when these roads are repaired, the potholes that are there will be fixed too. Or in the case of Mull Avenue, the washboard,
The
like
brick is
condition
being
of the brick
maintained,
would be
which all of
repaired.
us, even if we don't live in that ward, really value, so, yeah.
Any other committee members have any questions or comments? Okay. Marilyn Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish this had been brought to us sooner before it came out in the paper, because the minute it comes out in the paper, we get questions that I cannot answer. But I am delighted that Mull Avenue is being done. Okay, that's great information that Mull Avenue. But my concern is the timing of this, is that we have just done an issue 4 that we were successful with, and this is what I'm getting from the residents that have reached out for me. How much of this is coming from issue 4 money, okay, or is this, as I understood issue 4 was going to be additional monies that came into 3 areas, and that even with our capital budget, we would be putting aside X amount of dollars for repaving, but that the issue 4 money would bolster that money. So I think what I'm looking at when I see this is I need more information personally to be able to address my residents that have concerns. I like what I see here, and obviously there's a balance that has to be made with bringing in new manufacturing, whatever we do up at Romick Road. However, I guess I'm just saying these are projects that you have a great understanding of, and these are projects that I have about this much understanding of. And I can see where the general obligation is coming, and for me, my first question would have been, okay, general obligation under the capital budget, general obligation under the issue 4.
Yeah, and Jim can speak to this if I get something wrong, but the general obligation funding wouldn't be coming out of issue 4. So that's a complete separate pot of money. So this wouldn't be cutting it all into the resurfacing that was pledged as part of that initiative. And this money was budgeted in the capital budget for these types of projects.
Okay. And it was budgeted with what Councilman Swirsky said, with the knowledge of we would only pay 10%. Our portion would be normally about a 10%. I'm sure that varies.
Right. We only would be applying for the amount of local match that we felt like the capital budget could absorb.
And some of these have dates on them, because I see 2019, and then I see water main replacement program, obviously, of 2018. When are we looking at these projects? Are they all going to be primarily 2019?
Jim, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, well, first, there's only about $12.5 million available, so some of these projects obviously won't be proceeding. Okay. And you cannot begin construction on a project if we get awarded until July of next year. So the earliest any of the projects could start then. A number of these are still in the design stage, some in the preliminary design stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's 9 projects altogether, correct?
Yes.
And the total is 44 million if we would get all of it total, including all the sources that the matching funds from, and there's probably a dozen or so varying sources to do these projects. So we're going to be submitting for 9 separate projects that we reviewed in the capital budget before. Also wanted to note that there's, this is an application for the funding from the state, correct?
Correct.
So hopefully we'll be able to receive at least a portion. I don't see us getting the entire 9 projects, correct?
No, we received $12 million last year under this program, so we were very successful, but again, it's very competitive, and we don't know what the other communities will be submitting.
I'm sorry, I'm going to, Veronica Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see all the SCIP dollars and the local transportation improvement dollars, but the general obligation bonds, are we issuing bonds for the $4 million estimate amount? Or is that just GEO? Is that general obligation bonds or?
Yes,
So,
but that would be if the project gets approved and it proceeds. And we're also always seeking other funding sources, other federal funding sources or state, which could supplement those that we're showing as GEO at this time.
One nice thing about these programs is the match can come from non-local sources. So if we were to get another state or federal grant, we could apply it toward the project. They just need us to secure that, but it wouldn't. So I guess in other words, we could be in a position if we found other money, we didn't have to pay any GEO at all for a given project.
so we only know that after we, because technically we're a little over 10% if we're looking at the local transportation funds and the capital funds plus the GEO, right?
Right, I think what we would do is when projects were awarded and hopefully we do well, then we would look at the individual, financial stack for each project and program it accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah, all the projects will come back, separately like all of our other construction projects. This is just for the application, and then if we receive funding, then it would still come back to council, next year's capital budget and be brought to council for construction contract.
Come back to us. Swirsky?
When is the application due?
July 6th.
July 6th? Oh, okay, so pretty soon.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we can,
Mr. Mobian?
And this is quasi-related to this. The article that was in the paper about Romick Road, the young boy that was skateboarding, do we have anything posted up there that they should not be on the premise? Because if they get hurt, we're responsible, right? And I don't think that is a well-paved area and it's not secured, is it?
We could get back to you on the specifics, but I'm pretty sure that we have signage indicating that there's no trespassing on the property.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Further questions or comments? So, Mr. Ashley, this is due July 6th, did you say?
Yes, sir.
So we have, what kind of a problem would it be if we would put this on consent agenda? Is that a problem? Should we pass it tonight?
I request suspension of the rules just so we can get the application signed and legislation certified, given the 4th of July holiday.
motion for suspension of rules.
All those in favor of suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Those against? So the report will be for suspension of the rules this evening. Anything else to come before the committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.